So you have a damaged wall in your house. I'm going to show you how to fix that and prepare it for painting next on My Younger Life. So we're going to gather our supplies. We're going to get some plaster. I recommend the smallest that you can get. Putty knives and trowel. These need to be really thin. You can use plastic ones, but I like the metal because they're super thin. You will need a box cutter of some kind. And you're going to need to have sanding blocks. I love these sanding blocks. You can get a variety of grit. You'll want 2 will be fine, a little coarse and a little thinner. And I forgot to pull out my hammer, but you're going to need that. Here's our hole. If you saw my last episode where we moved a towel rack that had gotten pulled out of the wall, this is the hole that was left. And I'm not going to remove that anchor. I'm going to use that anchor for support of my plaster. Anytime you have a large hole, your plaster will shrink into that hole. So I'm going to use that anchor and leave it in place, and I'm going to dimple my sheetrock. The dimples work really well because you're going to fill that in with putty. You don't want anything that's going to stick out. So I'm going to feel that and see how that is. And once I get it all dimpled, I'm going to take my coarser sanding sponge, and I'm just going to go over the edges. I don't want anything sticking out, any loose paper, any bits of plaster. This is sheetrock. Sheetrock is paper with plaster in between. Very common in household walls. You can plaster any type of wall, wood, or anything. This just happens to be what I'm working on today. That one mark is actually pencil. We're going to paint this wall, so that'll get covered up later. And then we're going to take a nice heavy bead of plaster. Now you want to go on fairly thick, but not really, really heavy because we're going to do more than one coat. But I put on a lot at first, and then I lightly drag the knife across the top. And this will get off a lot of our excess, but we want to make sure we have plenty to fill in that hole that we created and that dimple. And that's going to have to set up. It's going to take 4 to 6 hours is what my compound says. The last drag I do really lightly. I'm barely putting any pressure at all. It's almost like feathering on the edges. I'm not going to worry about it too much on that first coat. So this one's different. I'm going to use my box cutter. I love this box cutter. It is a nice cobalt one. It folds up like a pocket knife, so you can easily fit it in your pocket when you're working. The blades remove very easily. You don't have to go get a screwdriver. I really hate stopping and doing that. And you don't even have to find blades or store them because it stores them right here in the handle. So you just move this little yellow tab and flip it open, and there's your extra blades. Anyway, we're going to use this. We're going to cut our paper off, and we're going to angle it out. We're not going to cut straight down. We're going to lay the blade against the sheetrock. We're wanting to create an angle or a bevel. I'm trying to get to this. The camera's right in the way. We're going to bevel that sheetrock. So we're creating almost like a funnel or a cone shape to our hole. There we go. We're not going to pull and tear at this. This stuff will take forever. This is right inside of a door frame. I don't have a ton of room to work with. But we're going to create that. Close up your knife. Don't leave it laying around open, or you will cut yourself. Not that I'm speaking from experience, mind you. Break out our sanding block again. We're going to get all those little rough pieces of paper off of there so they don't get mixed up into our plaster. Going for looseness, any loose pieces, and we're going to get our plaster compound out after we tap. Now, we're not going to have to do a lot of dimpling here. It's already dimpled, but I'm just tapping to bend the edges of that paper into the hole to create a better funnel or a better cone shape to hold our plaster. I use a lot of touch. Touch is very important because you can really feel if it's dimpled or if anything's puckering or sticking out. We're going to load up our trowel again. There you go. Fill in that hole. Nice and smooth. Even if you get it on your trim, you don't want to be careful. This stuff does dry up pretty hard, but you can sand it off lightly You don't want to damage the finish on your trim, but you can get that off of there. You can see how that filled in so well. We're not worrying about perfection at this point. Remember, we're going to do more than one coat. This is where the tape is puckering. It's a very small defect. I have another bathroom that we're going to do later that has a lot of damage to the tape. This bathroom is open, so we don't have a lot of trouble with steam, which can damage the tape on your walls. And I'm feeling it's still sticking out, so I'm not satisfied. It cannot stick out. We have got to bevel that into to create, once again, a nice little recess. Now the pros don't mind making big holes. They're really good at this. They have lots of spackling compound or plaster compound, so they're really not concerned about any of that being a problem. I don't want to have to do more repair than I need to, so I'm just going to just cut a little groove out so that I can fill that in lightly. It's not a very bad hole. I think I can do this one in one coat and not have to come back and do two coats. Always get out more than you need, because you can always scrape off. And we're going to work that in gently. See our little bubbles? Those are little air bubbles. You can easily trowel those out. I'm going to get back over it lightly, just easy. Okay. Looks like we have that covered pretty good. I'm not worried about those edges. I'm going to sand that off. Now we wait like 4 hours. And here we go. We're back. Going to sand these. I'm using my heavier grit. Can't remember what it is, but if you go in your hardware store, they're not a heavy grit. It's something like 120 to 100. So you don't want to dig in. You don't want grooves. So you don't need a really heavy, coarse sanding block, and you're not going to work this really hard. I'm not pushing down real hard. I don't want to dig out what I did because I don't want to put that in. And it looks like we may get away with one coat. I may come back in with my finer one here. Lots of dust. You may want to wear a dust mask. I'm not doing a lot of sanding, so I'm not wearing one at this time, but if you're sensitive to dust, you're going to have to wear some kind of mask. If you do a lot of this work, you'll have to wear a mask, definitely. So you can see how I have a hole here. The dimple, it has caved in. This plaster shrinks as it dries. That's why we usually have to do more than one coating. And it's important that you let this dry. That 4 hours at least. I did longer than 4 hours. And I'm feeling that it's definitely dimpled, so I'm going to have to do another coat. And I expected that. Same as before. And we're going to do this really light. We're not trying to fill it all in flush with the sheetrock because we're going to feather it out. There we go. Not too bad. And then we're going to sand. This is the other place. Remember, we have 3 of these. Sand this off. I've already put the second coat on this and it's dried. And this is above the towel rack. Making sure I can't fill in any bumps or dimples. There's one little spot there I want to work on just a little bit more. It's a process, but if you're patient, you can do this. I really feel like you can do anything with the proper amount of time, tools, and training. If you study things, I know you can do this. We're getting this finally fine-tuned. Really happy with the way this is turning out. Here we're coming back. It's been another 4 hours. I think this is actually another day. We're going to sand all that down one more time. Get a nice smooth finish. We're going to sand right up against that trim. These sponges on the ends does not have sand in it, does not have a grit to it, so it's really soft and gentle on your woodwork if you put the end up against it. And don't forget to clean up. Don't use a lot of water. Water will reconstitute that powder and go back to a putty form. I give this like a 9 out of 10 on easy. on the old lady meter. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Help support my channel. Thanks for watching.